We're joined tonight on a political panel, former Georgia State Representative LaDawn Jones and conservative commentator Scottie Nell Hughes. Great to have both of you with us tonight. LaDawn, I'll go to you first. Do you buy what the White House is saying, that this is in no way sexist at all, and Trump was talking about a corrupt political system when it comes to raising money? What do you think?
Absolutely not. We don't buy it. And every American that has watched this presidency and the type of rhetoric that he's used against women, Carly Fiorina when she was running against him, and a number of other people, we know exactly what he meant. But what is really sad about this is that the White House's excuse of this was not inappropriate sexual comment is that, oh, he's that insulting to everybody, which does not seem like a good excuse from the White House.
Scottie Nell, your thoughts on this back and forth that's unfolded that really has become just almost a firestorm, the president taking on, a senator that took him on to start with. I mean, the reaction is, many people think, very unpresidential.
Well, I think the president should have said it better in his tweet than how he stated it. However, as Sarah Sanders said, that if he would have made this tweet about Chuck Schumer, would we be having this much of an uproar? I highly doubt it. However, this is not a good course for the president or any Republican to be taking in the environment that we're in right now, where we do have so much talk about predators on both sides of the aisle. And at least the Democrats right now are doing a good job of holding their own accountable. And even despite whatever the results are tonight, Republicans are going to have to figure out a way to start having that same sort of accountability on their side if we're going to have any sort of victories in 2018.
Well, that's a great point. And tomorrow, Mitch McConnell's got the caucus getting together if Moore wins tonight, because there's a number of different stories here. Will the Republicans have a hard time explaining their support for Roy Moore? And here you have the Democrats, the women on the Democratic side, some 60 of them saying, but we want to investigate the President of the United States. Well, how in the world can Mitch McConnell call for an ethics investigation of Roy Moore and not support one on the President of the United States? So this presents some problems if Moore wins tonight. Scottie, what about that?
Absolutely. But on the Democrat side, you do have Senator Bob Menendez right now on trial. That right there also should bring up some concerns from the Democrats. So I think it's across the board. And the key is about the president. Is we knew these accusations beforehand. These women do deserve to have their story be told. They have been given time in the media to tell their stories. Yeah. And I think that at this point, impeachment proceedings did go forward about President Clinton, about his actions in office. We need to find out, are these actions continuing in the White House? And then maybe you have grounds for some sort of prosecution or sort of investigation.
So, LaDawn, is this an oh no movement for the Republicans if Moore wins? Because they can't support one investigation and not another. The caucus make a decision to go after Roy Moore and get a big vetting process going on there, but then say no to the president? What about that?
I think the Republicans are going to be facing hypocrisy in the face. And what we have seen from the Republicans is that when faced with the choice of having to say two different things out of both sides of their face, they're going to cave. And they'd rather not attack Roy Moore if it's going to require them attacking President Trump. The reality is the Democratic women were very smart. They knew that this Russia investigation was going nowhere, but they saw how the hashtag #MeToo movement was working, and so they made sure to push what President Trump put out there on his own to try to take him down. And it's going to really put the Republicans in a difficult situation.
Politically, what has Senator Gillibrand done to be called a lightweight and to be demeaned the way she was by the president? Now, whether you're left, right, blue, green, center, Republican, Democrat, whatever, I mean, did she deserve that, Scottie? And I'll ask you the same thing, LaDawn. What about that, Scottie?
Absolutely not. But we also know that the president fights back, and he had been attacked. This is a woman that has attacked him in the press, and he fights back. But the words he chose, I don't think they were necessarily because of her sex, that she's a female. I think it's just that she is someone that is opposing him. But they were also not the best choice of words. But President Trump is not a politician, and we've had issues with his words since day one. So to expect him to act like a politician and be polished is, I think, unrealistic expectations, even if it is the President of the United States.
What about acting professional? Is it professional to go down the road and demean someone in the United States Senate who has earned the votes of people in one of the largest states in the country, in New York? What about that, LaDawn?
Absolutely not. But we've seen this from Trump. This is what we expect from President Trump, which is why it is such a slap in the face that his wife Melania announced during his candidacy that her entire platform would be on cyberbullying. And just it's truly a smack in the face. You know, let me give a hint to President Trump and his communications team. He should have said nothing, but if he was going to say something, in order to take the shine off of him, he should have said, I support Senator Gillibrand in her fight to make sure that we address these sexual assaults, even though it's wrongly directed at me. That's it. That's all he had to say and keep moving. But instead, he went the 5th grade route.
Quick answer from both of you. What would a Democratic win in Alabama signal to the country? Scottie?
That sexual harassment, sexual assault messaging really does work, and this is going to be something that both sides need to pay attention to in 2018 when it comes to elections.
LaDawn, what would a Democratic win mean in Alabama?
I think it means that people are going to stop putting party before morality and vote based on real issues.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're asking you to stay with us because we may have some results before we leave this broadcast tonight. Thanks so much, LaDawn Jones and Scottie Nell. To our panel tonight, LaDawn Jones, former Georgia State representative and also conservative commentator, Scottie Nell Hughes, with us this evening. All right, this is so interesting from the standpoint of, number one, how much money has been spent by the Democrats to get this. It's been 2-1. There's some analysis out there, Scottie, that shows that it's been 1,000 commercials by Moore, 10,000 television commercials by the Democrat Doug Jones. Does that matter? Is that, or is it the kind of exposure that Moore has gotten would make up with that?
Well, I think it's about all of the engagement. We learned in the 2016 elections with Donald Trump having half the staff and 1/3 of the money spent that Hillary Clinton did, that you can still have a win depending on if you motivate your base, if you motivate your voters to get to the polls. That's the big issue today in Alabama, which there looks to be high turnout on both Republicans and Democrats, which is good, hence why we're still kind of seeing a tie. There's not a front runner that is being said, but it all comes down to messaging, engagement, and motivation, and who got their voters most motivated out to the polls today.
Yeah, it's going to come down to some very key Democratic counties in turnout tonight. LaDawn, isn't this about Montgomery? Isn't this about Birmingham? And isn't this about what kind of rural support Moore is going to get? I mean, that's basically the breakdown, isn't it?
It absolutely is, which is why we saw towards the end of the campaign, Doug Jones really tried to play up to the African-American base, which to the Democratic Party, particularly in the larger cities, by putting out his record of being the prosecutor for the person who killed the 4 black girls in the church. And they really tried, and there was some other more problematic messaging that he had for the African-American community, but that's what it comes down to, which is why they were throwing everything at the wall to see if they could stick in the Doug Jones campaign. Well,
we have this return in, only 1% of the vote. A long night in Alabama, but right now Doug Jones has 61.5% of the vote to Roy Moore's 38.1%. I don't know what that means, but it's 1% of the vote. No one wants to be behind early on, that's for sure. This is what does this mean if the Republicans lose? What does this say, Scottie, about President Trump, who won this state by 28 points?
Well, you also have to look at in Alabama, there was a large divide amongst the Republican Party, sort of like what we're seeing in the National Republican Party right now. You did have the more traditional Republicans that were not Roy Moore fans. They were not necessarily fans of him getting the nomination in the primary. And a lot of those folks, I saw today, the treasurer of the Huntsville Republican Women, she was actually encouraging people to go vote for Doug Jones.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of those folks that were flipping over because they just did not want to be tied to all of the scandals that were a part of Roy Moore.
It's going to be a long night. We're out of time, unfortunately. Scottie Nell Hughes and LaDawn Jones, always a pleasure to have you with us. And the Dow Jones went up.